Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video, interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community, and sometimes talking to myself. This is episode 250 or 251, depending on your point of view. I believe for numbering purposes, I have made this episode 250 on my YouTube feed and 251 on my Podbean feed. So if you're in podcast land, you're probably in the right chronological order. Chronological. Yeah, that's a word. That's a hard one. So today is April 26, 2021. I would like to thank Allison Gill of American Atheist for being on last week. Please support atheist groups that follow the kind of atheist community you want. And that might be a subject for tonight to discuss. The kind of atheist community I want and the kind of atheist community the people that I know want. So this week, it's either it's just me, or today it's just me. It won't be just me in 2 days and in 3 days. So I get to go on a 45-minute rant about the actions of an alternate timeline and For All Mankind, the Apple Plus show that just completed season 2, or I'll answer questions from this here chat room. And by the way, it's empty at the moment. My glass is not. I did something weird. So I had 2 of my all-stars. So, Backwoods Bastard, Drafty Kilt, the same kind of beer, but I had these in individual little glasses. These are the glasses we got at the Strong Beer Festival, which every beer at that festival was 8% or higher. Thumbs up. Some of them were IPAs. Thumbs down. So this is the bourbon barrel, which is everything is nicely blended. That's probably why it won a gold medal. And then this is the Backwoods Bastard, which has a lot more. You get a little more of the peat flavor, the vanilla flavor, and the booze. And I thought could do a cuvee, so I mixed the 2 together. But you know what? Yeah. So I'm wearing the t-shirt. I probably need to get new t-shirts or a new design. And I have the bow tie because last night was the Oscars. And every year we go to an Oscar party at a friend's house. And of course, last year we didn't have that party. This year we got to go because our closest friends that are sort of our pod of sorts, everybody's gotten the vaccination, part 1 and part 2, electric boogaloo. And I probably would die if I tried to tie a bow tie. So I went to Party City and I got 2 elastic bow ties. One was black and one was pink. And I lost the black one, so now I wear the pink one. I thought I'd tell a story from my weekend. So when life gets frustrating, you want to accomplish something. You want that feeling of I did something. So my wife took some time to reorganize. We have a closet downstairs that has all of our electronics, all of our batteries, every screw possible, all the old paint stuff we have from painting the house years ago. And she found a saw, and this saw it's kind of like a toddler's my first saw. It's really not meant to actually saw anything. So when we had the goats come to our house, we discovered that a tree in our front yard, and I don't know, it's kind of like a mini tree. I mean, it's 30 feet tall, was dead, and we wanted to cut it down. So I thought, you know what? I bet even with this, my first saw, I bet I can cut down this tree. One of the reasons why I want to cut the tree down is, first of all, it's dead. Second of all, it's trapped in our, it's like our power line is like right where this tree is. So I am sawing and I'm listening to a Hassan Abi like YouTube because I've listened to like 5,000 hours of that over the past month. And, he's tearing Steven Crowder a new one because it's so easy to do. Because if you're a right-wing commentator, your arguments can be taken down by a 6-year-old, but not necessarily a college student, which, we can talk about that. But I cut and I cut and I cut, and I was actually making some progress. One of the things we got when we moved into our house was somebody left a machete in our little shed in our driveway. Problem is, it was rusted out, and when I tried to cut this tree down with it, it was so dull. There was no way it was happening. But this thing was actually making progress, and I was cutting, and I was cutting, and I was cutting, and finally, the tree came down. And you know what you really should do when you're cutting down a tree in your yard? You should think about what direction you're cutting in, and that will ensure what direction the tree falls. What direction did the tree fall? Right into the damn power line. And this tree had like 50 branches just sticking out all over the place. So it's hanging on the power line by one of these branches. And so I get the thing and I reach as far as I can and I cut up and down. And I'm making the motion that's probably terrible for YouTube. I'm going to get demonetized. Oh, someday I can't wait to get to say, oh God, I just got demonetized. That'll be fun. About 5,000 years when I have 1,000 people. But anyway, so I'm cutting and I'm cutting and I'm cutting and it, get rid of that one. And then the next one and then the next one and the next one. And finally I get it to fall and all the branches are gone. And just let that be a lesson to you when you're trying to do something because you're frustrated, think about what you're actually trying to accomplish and think about not knocking down your power line because it would have been worse. So what happened that led to this was on Saturday, our cat was meowing his head off. It was raining in Atlanta and our cat often meows his head off because he's a cat. But what happened is we had a leak. We just had our kitchen redone. And one of the new can lights, basically water was dripping through it, and that was terrible. So we had to basically contain the water, and we had somebody come and find a hole in our roof, so we were frustrated. And that's why I was cutting down a tree in our front yard, and I almost disconnected us from the power and potentially electrocuted myself. And to accomplish something in my life, I almost attempted to electrocute myself. But not only did I cut the damn tree down, I got all the branches off and I got them all on the street and the people actually took them. Occasionally, we have people to take trash. We have people to take recyclables, but not glass for some reason. Turned out they just took the glass that was being recycled and they put it right into the dumpster. That was fun. So yeah, that, and then they have a separate person come and take like yard waste, which is, like this dead cut up tree. Tucker Carlson, I don't know. Does he wear normal ties? I thought the bow tie was his thing. I don't know. It's hard, with me and with the flashing light coming off my glasses, you're looking at the focal point is here. This is the focal point. With Tucker Carlson and his I'm confused, I think I just farted, but I don't know what it smells like, kind of facial expression, that's where you're looking. So you're never gonna say, ooh, he did a nice Windsor knot today. You're not doing that. That's just not happening. So the whole point of tonight's show was to kind of celebrate the whole fact that I got through 250 episodes and to think, I've been a little lazy. I've been trying to double up when I miss a week because I would like to actually have 52 episodes in a year because I did an episode last year that was, hey, ReasonCon reunion because it's that time, and it was episode 220. So I had just, I've only got through 31 episodes of Cut Rate Chippendale. Hey, at least I'm in the realm, mister. So yeah. Anybody, I'll leave it up in chat room feel free. This sucker is tied real well. I will tell a story that I didn't know how to tie a tie until pretty sure well after I graduated from college. So when I went to like a formal dance in high school, one of our neighbors like tied a tie for me because my dad was always away in business, so he wasn't around. So I kept that tie tied, and I would just loosen it up. I would, throw it off, and I would just put it back on. And that is the tie I wore for, I don't know, like a decade. And eventually I did figure out how to tie my tie. I should have Pastor Matt Riddle back on the show because he's he likes to do all those crazy ties. Like he knows all the knots. Single, by the way. Anyway, I will leave it up to the chat room to ask questions. And if you don't ask questions, I will start talking about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. And it might have nothing to do with atheism and skepticism, but it probably will. Although it is frustrating when you're like, so enough of that cuvee crap. So, yep. Do you know it's true? I should do this as like a trivia question. Do you know that I actually bought a beer that has 2.6% alcohol last week on purpose? I mean, it was relatively cheap. And it does taste like a pretty bitter stout. It actually has a pretty good amount of flavor for 2.6 Tell Us Those Stories. Oh, I don't know. I'm not really sure what that means. I'm just telling stories of myself with the ability to not, I don't know, like, I feel like things have like echoes in the atheist community. So yeah, the whole Dawkins thing, I feel like it's been going on for like 6 months. Like everything is, time doesn't exist anymore. So there's like the fact that he made the statement and the fact that so many prominent atheists defended him. And it reminds you, I think back to like, hey, it's cool. 4 years ago, ReasonCon happened. Oh yeah, who was the main speaker there? Oh yeah, Lawrence Krauss. Yeah, didn't do so well with the ladies. Well, actually, sometimes did very well with the ladies, but in other cases, yeah, the whole consent thing. It seems like the people of that ilk are the ones who are like defending Dawkins. And you know what? Okay. I remember one of my former guests, Matthew the Apostle, who went to the ReasonCon I went to, the one 6 years ago, ReasonCon 2, and he didn't really enjoy the fact that it was just a drunken festival. And I'm like, well, have you ever met atheists before? Just curious. But eventually, I remember getting my timeline because I made some comment about ICE, and I don't know, he was like pro ICE for some reason. Not the thing you put in the glass, the the other one. And he was worried about the atheist community not being a place for him, and I said, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, just because he seemed to be the kind of person who would defend David Silverman, defend Lawrence Krauss, and say, well, but Richard Dawkins has done so much good for the community. And it's like, okay, there are a lot of people who have done good things, but just try to think of your trans friends, trans family, trans people you don't even know are trans, and how what he said made them feel. And, after whatever 7 years of doing this show, it's kind of, you get tired of like defending your existence. And don't forget the fact that before the whole situation with Dawkins being bad with trans people, he was bad with women. When I believe it was Rebecca Watson, like, mentioned that somebody like propositioned her in an elevator and she was uncomfortable, and and he was like, fuck you, basically. I made sure that like she wouldn't be there. I mean, there's a reason that the like 4 horsemen are men, and I am 100% sure that if Christopher Hitchens were alive today, he would probably be outlight at worst. I feel like he and Ben Shapiro would be great buddies for some reason. Like Dave Rubin, well, we'll see. He would even see how dumb Dave Rubin is. But I feel like, it's like Sam Harris. Ugh. Daniel Dennett. Okay. Richard Dawkins. Are you kidding me? Plus, the whole situation just, makes you think you don't need heroes anymore. And I really want to, move past that whole thing. And that's Sarah Ray saying, oh, thanks, because I'm listening to her podcast, which I believe someone in the chat room occasionally is on that podcast. Huh. I bet you can come up with some good questions for me for Wednesday. In any case, yeah. So the defenders are there. Apparently there's a guy who has 3 names. When a guy has 3 names, you're like an assassin. That's like it. So the guy who goes by Mr. Deity, apparently one of Dawkins' defenders is a guy named Michael Shermer, who's been accused of rape. And Mr. Deity did videos actually like shaming the woman for having too much to drink, and did not back off those statements when people are like, maybe you shouldn't do that. And it just seems like there's a pattern. The defenders, there seems to be a pattern. There seems to be people have a wish to, can we be like the Republican conservative status quo establishment where there are no consequences for our actions? There haven't been for so long. And now that there are, and I mean, the consequences for Richard Dawkins' actions, like he has a new book coming out, right? The sales of that book are not going to be harmed at all by what he said on Twitter. Not going to happen. Whatever cancel culture is, he is not canceled. The people who are quote unquote canceling him have already kind of canceled him. Like, I'd pretty much given up on him. Like, I actually was going to see him speak, I don't know what it was, 10 years ago, and I got sick, and I was like, should I go? Should I not? Remember when I actually wanted to go to places where there were a lot of people there? Yeah, and then I passed. I passed on that. But yeah, one of the defenses, the Mr. Deity guy was like, well, he helped people. That reminds me of a podcaster I used to know named David Smalley, who was like, hey, I used to do this thing where I raised a lot of money for atheist causes, so the shitty views I have should be ignored argument. I feel like that's a fallacy. I don't know my fallacies very well. But in any case, yeah, we're officially 4 years past the last Reason Con. And as I mentioned on previous shows, I'm like, I don't know. I know there are going to be conferences, like the American Atheist Conference is going to be in Atlanta next year. I wonder if I'll go, like, Nashville nuns, since someone in the chat room doesn't get to go to that. Is it, is as cool of an event as it could have been, Listen, I can sit in a parking lot and just drink high alcohol beers in Nashville, and I don't have to go anywhere and listen to people talk, right? The only thing, so the American Atheist Conference is in Atlanta next year, and yeah, I would like to go to that. And it'd be nice to meet some of the people there, and I probably could get to be on some kind of podcaster panel. Man, remember when like getting on a podcaster panel was like, woo, and now it's like, God, I got to host that like 3 times, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's not as fun as it is. You think it is. Some fake Trump supporter like going off on that one in Chattanooga. That was classic. That was just some good times. But I do want, one thing I think I mentioned is like, you should just do a conference where it's just a hangout portion, and you don't listen to speakers, because we don't listen to speakers, right? But yeah, the only thing is like, it's in Atlanta, but it's also like the weekend of Easter, and sometimes I do family stuff on Easter, so we'll see. I mean, I suppose I could go for like the Friday, Saturday portion and then go do whatever, family stuff. 2 panels. Oh gosh. I mean, over time, we should think of, evolution. We should evolve conferences into what we want. Like everybody who's going to speak at a conference is someone you've heard speak 100 times. And no matter what they say, you've heard them say it before. But you just want those friendships. You think of all those people that I met there 6 and 4 years ago, who I'm still friends with on Facebook. And I pretty much 100% enjoyed the interaction. And I do think ultimately, if you do become like a personality, like a Dillahunty, and you make a living off of this, then that just changes everything. Like you sometimes don't get to be a person. You get to be the person who's on that podcast. Like all the Puzzle and the Thunderstorm people, they're just the people to do the podcasts that everybody loves and is just nonstop. I mean, you don't get to be a person anymore. But I was just thinking of like, so I'd come up with like, here's a list of all the people who had defended Richard Dawkins and the fact that he got a 1996 Humanist of the Year award taken away from him. So it was Steven Pinker, who's, done that whole, I feel like 20 white guys have written that book. Hey, things are really good right now. Hey, I'm a white guy, by the way. Claire Lemon from Quillette. One of my favorite lines from the Friendly Atheist podcast was Hemet Meta and his co-host was like, "What's Quillette?" And he said, "You don't want to know." And honestly, you don't want to know. You're a person, not a goat. I was actually thinking most people, once I redo the studio, and by the way, for the people who are here, wait, let me go. So my finger right there, see where it's pointing? That's the color the wall will be maybe next week. We had a leak in our roof, and because of that, we didn't paint this office. We're going to redo the office. I'm going to have new furniture, a new background. Eventually, I'm going to have maybe some Steve Shives-esque kind of cool lighting. I like the lighting. But the people who are defending Dawkins, so Pinker, Claire Lemon, Jeffrey Miller, somebody I never heard of, Peter Boghossian, famously part of the fake hoax paper that got him and James Lindsay quasi-famous a few years ago. James Lindsay, who's doing PragerU videos now, and his main breadwinner is something that's supported by a Christian nationalist group. Yasmin Mohammed, who is an ex-Muslim who is loved by right-wingers like Ben Shapiro, appears to be grown in an ex-Muslim female lab. Atheists for Liberty, the atheist core of the American Nazi Party. Godless spell checker, pretty much your typical British white dude who hates Islam like an ex-girlfriend who done him wrong. So, yeah. And then Todd Stiefel, who actually I had not heard about him for years. He's one of those guys who just inherited a lot of money from his family and was donating to a lot of atheist causes. And he got mad at the American Humanist Association and said, "I'm not giving you any more money because you were against Richard Dawkins." But I feel like that whole thing, golly, is just, oof. It's demonization, and there's a bit of supporting the status quo that's in any marginalization of the trans community, and I'm not in for it, And there's this idea of like what disability has changed over time. Like the idea of being gay is acceptable. That's changed over time. It used to be a mental disorder. Gender dysphoria is considered such, but the good news is we're all mentally ill in some way, right? My lack of self-esteem and refusal to join should not be considered on par with someone suffering from gender dysphoria, although I think I came up with a new term. I believe I have atheist dysphoria at the moment. That is a real thing. And Speaking of shows that do things they probably shouldn't, while I kind of enjoy Heath Enright's Sarah Huckabee Sanders thing, apparently she raised $4.8 million in 8 weeks. She's running for governor in Arkansas. I don't know what like conservative dystopian laws they have left to pass in Arkansas. So got to consider that anyone associated with the Trump administration is going to get more government work is just frightening. And then speaking of, hey, not everybody from a certain community is good. Caitlyn Jenner. So talk about Caitlyn Jenner, someone who is known really well for being trans and then for being terrible and being like a Republican trans person. That's possible. So yeah, in terms of trans celebrities, not one of the good ones. And there was, it's all the like culture war stuff that is going on, like the Dr. Seuss stuff and the Mr. Potato Head being gender fluid. So it was like a British paper after Joe Biden told about his climate plans. And it was a British paper that put out the whole, hey, we're going to be able to have 4 pounds of beef in a year. So it's like 1 burger a month, which actually, if you do the math, does that come out? I mean, American burgers are not 4 fucking ounces. American burgers are like 2 pounds. I mean, give me a break, people. So that became the thing. Oh, God, Disney. There was a really good, I know I'm Hassan Piker fanboy at the moment, but he did a really good video. So there's that letter that came out about how Disney was getting too woke. And the guy who was a Republican wanted Disney to go back to its roots. Well, in this Hassan Piker video, he actually looked into Disney's roots and he watched videos from like Song of the South and just these awful stereotypes that are portrayed on there. There is a reason why this has not come out on DVD and it's not available on Disney Plus, I'm pretty sure. But like what Walt Disney represented is not like this idealized everybody's happy version of America. It was these terrible racial stereotypes that were just awful. And you know what? It's a good thing. Isn't it a good thing? Like, isn't it a good feeling where you're like, oh man, I was wrong about this and I changed my mind and I'm progressing. Like, what's wrong? Like progression and being progressive in America, not being liberal, whatever that is not a bad thing. And the fact that companies, well, I don't know. I was like, oh, companies are being nicer to their employees. Kind of not. But just the fact that like in Disney, employees were allowed to kind of express themselves. I mean, they're going to have rules. They work for a very large corporation that like owns every major movie franchise that we know at the moment. Yeah, Florida. What fun. But anyway, the idea that Disney's like kowtowing and the weird like Marco Rubio New York Post thing about woke corporations. Like, I mean, it was the Republicans that like opened the floodgates. Like, corporations are people because you know what? Most of them are conservative. They're on our side. They're donating money to our side. Bunch of companies donated a lot of money to the Republicans in the Georgia legislature who passed that voter law that restricted the fuck out of voter rights in Georgia. And then after the fact, some of them were like, oh no, we also have people who give us money who are pissed off by this. So let's say a few words and let's have the Major League, All-Star game move out of Atlanta, which, it's all a show. It's all a weird show. To just like say, hey, we're on your side. And they're really not. Like, shouldn't all poor people basically band together and say, rich people, you best hand over some of that cheddar or we're going to start killing you. I mean, the Republican conservative side gets to occasionally kill people and get away with it. People on the left occasionally get to like loot a Target, and that's it. And that's equality right now. That's what we kind of have. I mean, right now the state of Arizona is doing an audit of last November's vote, and it's not. It's like, oh, we're the side of little government and we're side of free speech. And then when it's like, hey, we're going to do this audit of a vote that's already been audited like 4 times, but it's audited by some company that we've never heard of, but they support Trump, so that's cool. And then we're going to do it behind closed doors, and press isn't invited. And I don't even know what the damn press is anymore. It's like a freaking Substack subscription. That's all that's left. No one believes anything that the press puts out anyway. So that's a lot of fun. I just poured the rest. It's all gone. But I mean, it was good news last week that Scientology on it, that Derek Chauvin did get found guilty. Although in a way it was, it's kind of like when corporations say, we support Black Lives Matter, but we give money to the police, that kind of thing. Like they were just throwing an obviously awful person under the bus, sending them to prison. Like it's not justice. Like, what happens when you go to prison, and when you're like a cop and you go to prison, it's going to be a pretty terrible experience. Of course, when the right wing is all about consequences, this guy did kill somebody and it was recorded. And you know what? If a gutsy person didn't record that, there would not have been, this wouldn't have been news. No one would have even talked about it. It would have never happened. So it's good that we have gutsy people that are recording everything. And you know what? It's going to go over the top occasionally. Like there was this video of this black teenager walking through like a white neighborhood, and this veteran old creepy dude was just yelling at him, and someone recorded the video, and it was just like, I don't know what some of these are doing, but if it does keep violence from happening and people being treated like crap from happening, then I'm sorry, everybody's gonna have to be video recording every interaction everybody has at all times until we grow up a little bit, I suppose. I mean, I don't even know anymore. So yeah, I saw that so my second episode I did with Paul Sading, who famously just ditched the atheist community when it became obvious that all of his endeavors were not going to work out. I mean, you know what it's like being a poker professional. You can know the right things to do. You can figure out how to read people's tells. It doesn't mean that you're going to be consistently competitive and make a living. And that's the same thing when you are dealing with a niche situation, like being an atheist content creator. There are only so many people who can make a living off it. There are only so many people who can even make a second living off it. My Pico's making $50 a month off this, and a lot of that goes into the costs for the show anyway. So the idea that you're going to make a living off of it, and the idea that you constantly are hey, how come I feel like I do a better show than so-and-so who has 10 to 1,000 times the amount of subscribers? Sometimes it's just luck. So it's just luck is the reason why the Puzzle and Thunderstorm people can make a living doing what they do. It's luck that Cognitive Dissonance is popular. There are 50 shows, 100 shows that do what they all do. There are tons of shows that talk about atheist shit like I do. There are a lot of people do interviews. I joked for a while that I couldn't find shows that do interviews. Every show does interviews because that's the easiest thing to do, is to ask people questions. So, I have to get to the point where I'm just this is what it is, and I still enjoy doing the show, even though I don't ask me a fucking question yet, except for maybe Chris, and I think it was about beer. But it just has to be, I'm excited about the fact that, I had Allison Gill on, I'm going to have Sarah on. It's going to be 2 straight trans women. And just with all the shit that's going on toward trans people, I want someone who's trans to be on, but I don't always want, I don't want to be the person who's always answering the atheist 101 questions. I don't want to be the one debating people all the time. I just want to have interesting conversations with people, I don't want to be talking how terrible our community is, because it's not any more terrible in any other community. You just discover you get this false idea, and it's my fault. It's everybody's fault who gets into an atheist community thinking we are better people. And then it turns out that's not true. We have the right answer to a pretty obvious question, but it's not very obvious to a lot of people. So I'm just glad that, I don't know, I get to be privileged in a way. I don't have my livelihood on the line because I do this, but I'm sure if somebody I knew found this and found it could, cost. But I figured for Chris, so Chris's favorite person in the world right now is Ben Shapiro, because Ben Shapiro moved from California. There's this famous, all these conservative content creators, and then Joe Rogan, wherever the fuck Joe Rogan is, moved out of California to states that don't have as high of taxes. So Ben Shapiro moved to Nashville, and he took the picture of him wearing the cowboy hat that every person who is a tourist in Nashville has to get, the 10-gallon hat. So what he did last week was everything that he wears, he's doing cosplay. He's cosplaying as what he actually is. He is a husband. I think he has kids. I think he has 2 kids. I don't know. Anyway, he's wearing the t-shirt tucked into nice jeans. It probably cost him $200. And he's in the parking lot of a Home Depot, and he's like, hey, Home Depot is the kind of corporation you should support because they're not woke. I mean, the guys who are Home Depot people should probably go somewhere else, because I believe they're conservative assholes. But hey, it's the whole corporation thing. They're all evil. In any case, he does this whole video where he's outside in a parking lot of a Home Depot. You should support these companies. You should buy things from these companies. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to buy stuff. And you assumed he's he's going to buy a power drill. He's going to buy some nails. He's going to buy some paint. He's going to buy some flooring for his house. He buys one piece of wood, and he has it bagged, although the bag's about 1/10 the size of the piece of wood. The wood's almost bigger than he is, because he's $1.50, if that. And he's oh, I got this receipt. He's showing the receipt so far away that you couldn't see what it had written on it anyway. So he was here's proof that I bought something from here. I mean, and he probably wrote it off anyway, because he's, it's a company expense. But it's just so obviously cosplay. The people who are on the conservative side, if Ben Shapiro could have sold one of his shitty screenplays, whatever it was in the 90s, when he couldn't make it as someone in Hollywood who had the family background to be in Hollywood, I mean, he would be there. I mean, people were talking about that, movie that his company, the Daily Wire, did, that was all about hey, a school shooting, but this high school girl stops it, Die Hard style. He didn't write the movie. He just bought the rights to it. Somebody else, but it's his worldview, clearly. But he's just not a human being. I listened to all these Hassan Abi videos, and there was Steven Crowder talking about LeBron James, who was, legitimately complaining about the cop in Columbus who shot the 16-year-old girl. She had a knife. Oddly, lots of white males who shoot a bunch of people. Kyle Rittenhouse, for example. Didn't make the cops shoot them. But in any case, this guy's like wearing a gun on his podcast and acting so like strong and manly. And I think he might be closeted. But it's just these terrible stereotypes and these just awful, like, I want people on the left actually to be like these caricatures that they are on the right. And we need more. We have some, we have enough, but I feel like we almost need more to like counterbalance. Like, I feel like the conservative side of America has just gotten away with so much that people are like, oh, I can pretend to be that, It's funny that someone I used to, admire, Adam Carolla, like, he did a segment on a show called Lying or Stupid. And I'm like, well, when you're on the conservative side, you often have to be both. You have to act dumb, which Ben Shapiro does really well. And then you have to be stupid to like match what you think your audience is and tell them what they want to hear, which is, a good 40% of what Donald Trump did. But do we want that? Like, do we want leaders like Richard Dawkins to tell us what we want to hear? I mean, I don't think so. We clearly want people to tell us that we're right and that what we think is true, or occasionally to give us our opinions, which is, totally fine. But in any case, come on, people. It's like 42. You have questions. Am I going to have to tell a joke, which I don't have? I mean, I talked about me cutting down a damn tree, which, by the way, I did. That's probably more than Ben Shapiro could do. I mean, my arms were burning, man. When I was doing that, he should do the motion too. I mean, if he gets to repeat the lines of wet ass pussy, he can do the arm motion, right? No? I mean, I did. No pants. It's good that, I hadn't come up with like a studio name, and this should just be No Pants Studio, right? Because you're only seeing this. I'm wearing shorts, by the way. Just, you're not going to get to prove it. But yeah, performative stuff. But yeah, it was, as I just look at my notes, it's like, it's very sigh that when Brett Kavanaugh was running for the Supreme Court, he was basically like, oh, the stuff I did when I was in high school should be ignored. And then the Supreme Court just passed a law that said anyone who's basically sentenced to life without parole as a minor, that thing they did when they were a kid, that gets to stick with them for the rest of their lives. Way to go, America. You really chose well. I mean, they even tried to have like the worst caricature of like conservative jurisprudence. I said jurisprudence. Impressed? No, I didn't mean either. And they still made it through. But I do, I don't know. I'm, looking forward to the Sarah interview on Wednesday. So yeah, my week is pretty booked. Like last week, I decided to bail on my episode, and now I'm glad I did it. Now that it's almost over, but on Wednesday I'm gonna have Sarah on. Of you know what? It's like my show. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. The name of it. It's like Atheist Community of Polk County, which is not a fake county. It's a real county. It might be the county Deborah lives in. But we'll get to talk about some Florida politics, so that'll be fun. En banc. And then on Thursday, I think I'm going to be on the Neil the 604 Atheist show. I'm a little bit nervous because I'm going to be talking about my near-death experience. And because he likes to do shows where people talk about their deconversion. I never was converted. I think if I was converted, I would probably still be there. I'm just a follower. I'm not just looking for a cult leader. I'm amazed all these years in the atheist community. I just haven't fallen under anybody's spell. At least not for that long. because I've been too busy drinking beer in the back. It's like, the thing is, if you have 2 glasses, then you have twice as much to drink, right? Very important. And Chris, I'll try to pick up some, Russian stouts for you, if I can. But yep. So the thing is, I'll be doing the interview on Thursday, and what Neil does is he does like the interview for like an hour, and then he does a post show that lasts like 3 hours, and it's like a weeknight. So yeah, I'm not going to be on for 3 hours after I talk. It's going to be 8 o'clock, hopefully 8 to 9, and then maybe 9 to 10, and then I'm going to call it a night. Plus, it's just, a bunch of atheists drinking together. Hey, who does that? Nobody. I know. Anyway, so I'm going to give it about 30 seconds-ish. I'm going to let the 2 nice people in the chat room, if you want to ask questions, feel free. If you feel like you're done, then you're done, and I'm going to do the old wrap-up. And the best part about this episode is I'm not going to have to edit shit because I'm going to do it all live. It's so glorious. No Simpsons sounds for you, and I'll just have a nice contemplative sip of my beverage. There's a little bit of like delay, I think, from the people. Well, I may eventually get back to charging people on Patreon, but for now I'm not. So if you want to support this show, be like Freethinker215, Alan Marks, Human, Chris of the Postmodern Polymath Podcast. Honestly, just for the cat hat picture, you should support that podcast. I might have to do my cat wearing some kind of Russian hat. Larry, Daryl, and the other Daryl, and go to patreon.com/Zachrilege. Follow me on Twitter, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook. Send all mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Always looking for new guests. Thank you for me. Yeah, 250 episodes, 6+ years. Oh, it only seems like 6 generations. So Sarah Ray will be on Wednesday night. So please come back then. Until then, let's continue the conversation. Let me burp live on.